In this component for module number 1, we will cover the security concepts related to the cloud computing. And as we mentioned that we covered in the previous sessions some security concepts in general, which are related to data in general, may be hosted in cloud or on-prem data centers. Now we will go through some security concepts related to the cloud computing. This as the cryptography, and this cryptography, it's one of the most important concept which you have to be familiar with. Access controls do allow the user authentication, authorization, and accounting. Data and media sanitation, you have to make sure that your data it's really deleted, and the media where the data is stored is destroyed, and the data it will not be able to retrieve once more if you are leaving the security, or I mean the cloud service provider service. You have to make sure that the network infrastructure is secure. For example, the data it's encrypted on the network, then even if there is any attack or hacker who was able to connect to the network, he will not be able to capture any data. And finally, the virtualization security, which is very important, where the virtualization it's considered the core of the cloud service provider infrastructure. Okay, let's speak about each one of them in more details. And just I want to highlight the cryptography. And I remember that someone he asked day before yesterday about cryptography, and we mentioned that we will cover this in more details. And this is the slide where we will cover the cryptography. The cryptography, it is the act of encryption of the data, that you are changing the data from one form to another form, from one form, readable form to non-readable form. We usually we are called from text mode into cipher mode, from text into cipher. Text this of course the one which we can read it, and we cipher this it will be the considered as a garbage. If you can open the Windshark for example, and the Windshark it was capturing some traffic, encrypted traffic, then you will find really this act as a garbage. You will not be able to understand anything. In the encryption, you have to understand two very important factors. Encryption depends upon two important factors. What are they? Number one, the algorithm. What is the algorithm which you are used for encryption? The algorithm, there are a lot of algorithms in the market which it can be used. You have, for example, this, you have 3DS, you can have AES, you can have the one which called blue fish. You have a lot of encryption. What is the algorithm encryption? Algorithm encryption, it's a group of data, a group of, it's a process or a group of interrelated activities which change the data from text to cipher. And this algorithm, it's standard. It means that we are knowing the algorithm very well. You are in Saudi Arabia, you are in the States, you are in Europe, you are in China, you are in wherever you are, this algorithm is standard. Then if you are using a specific algorithm, and suppose that this is the algorithm which you are using, which is the AES, and we have some input data as a clear text here. When we output data, it will be the cipher. But now, if we are saying that this algorithm is standard, then how we can consider that there is no hackers, he will be able to get this cipher and make reverse engineering and get the text back? Because if this AES, it is standard and it's well known. And by the end of the day, it's a group of activities or mathematical operations. When if I make any mathematical operation, 2 plus 2 equal 4, and I know that it's 4, then it's easy to revert the process and I can understand what is the type of the text. Then we will come here to the other component of the encryption. The other component of the encryption, it's the key. It's the key. Why? The key, it will be very important here. The key, it will be a very important concept. Are you familiar with the keys, encryption keys?
No, sir.
Okay. The keys, it's the point of the key here that this, it will be considered a text, not text, of course, it will be characters, some characters, and usually the length of the key, it will be very important, 1K, 2K, 4K, and so on. It depends upon, of course, by increasing the size of the key, it will be harder to be predicted, because, for example, if I'm saying that it's only one character, then this means that it will be from 0 to 9, or from A to Z, or from A to Z small, and so on. Then if it's one character, then we may have some combination which it can reach up to almost here about 26, and here it's 10. Then 26 by 2, 52 plus 62 option. When we have 62 possibility, I can try all of them. But if I'm saying, as I say here, it's 1K, this means that it's 1024 bytes, then this is a bit, sorry, 1024 bit, then it's not easy to be predicted. The key, it will be integrated with the process here. It will be integrated with the process here. Then it will be able to encrypt the data. Yes, I know the AES, how it's working, but I don't know the key. And if I don't know the key, then this means that I will not be able to reverse the cipher into text. I remember that we mentioned this example before, but let's say it again, explain this example again. And this is a very basic example, but it will show you the meaning of the key and the algorithm. The key and algorithm, you know, there is something called substitution. There is a basic method, it's called substitution. This method, it was used by Julius Caesar. And if you want to send some data and information to his soldiers in the field, then we have to send some letters to them. And they discovered that these letters, it may fall in the hand of their enemies, and they will understand or know their plans. When they start to do some tricks, and these tricks, it was the basics of the encryption. What is this basics? We are saying, okay, suppose that you have the word Osama. I want to send the word Osama to the soldiers or the leaders in the field. I will have the algorithm, it's called displacement. The algorithm, it's called displacement. What's displacement? I will make a displacement. This means that, for example, you know what is the alphabetics. You have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. These are the letters. And if I want to make displacement, this means that whatever any character, I will make a displacement for this character. Then suppose that you have you. I will not write you in my letter. No, what I have to do, what I have to write. I know that I have to write something else. It may be V, because I make a displacement by one character plus one, or it can be T because I make minus one, or I can use plus two, or can I plus three, or I can have minus five, and so on. Then this displacement, it is the algorithm. This is the algorithm. That the algorithm, this is the way where you will have to make the encryption. These are the activities which you will follow to make the encryption. Then what is the key? The key, it will be very simple. The key, it will be the value of the displacement. So let's say plus one. Let's say plus one. Then instead of type Osama, I will not type Osama. Then what I have to type? U, it will be V. S, it will be T. A, it will be B. M, it will be N. And A, it will be P. Okay, this is what the soldier we will receive in the field. Then, if this it will go to the hand of their enemies, it does not mean anything at all. They will not understand anything. This is garbage for them. But because they are knowing and they agree that this is the key, it will be in the commander, he typed the encryption by using plus one, then what they have to do, they have to make the reverse, minus one. It will be minus one. Then they will take this minus one. If it's V, I have here V, and V minus one, it will be U, okay. And I have T, this is the T, and minus one, it will be S. Then B, it will be A, and N, it will be A, Osama. Then after they will apply the key and the algorithm, they will be able to discover the real text. This is a very simple example of the cryptography. Of course, in cryptography, it's very, very complicated. We have a lot of techniques for cryptography. We have something called shared key. We have public and private keys. We have the Hillman keys to create the shared key. We have the digital certificates. We have the confidentiality, integrity, and non-repudiation. All these concepts are covered under cryptography, but unfortunately, this is not the right time to discuss all these things. But inshallah, in Q4, in the next quarter, we will have a course called Cryptography. This course, it will cover all these concepts and it will be very useful. And I strongly recommend that all of you to attend it, because encryption is very important. If you are a security engineer and you don't understand the concepts of the certificates and how it will protect the confidentiality, the public key and the private key, shared key, and all this stuff, then this it will be considered as a risk. Really, it will be considered as a risk in your knowledge. The second concept which we have to cover for the security concepts related to the security, the cloud computing, it is the access control. And I think we highlight some information about the access control, and we said that it is the IAAA. And the IAAA, this, it will be the identification, authentication, authorization, and accounting. What is the identification? Identification means who are you? Who are you? This is very simple. Who are you? I am Osama. Okay, good. But I'm not sure that you are really Osama. I am afraid that you may be a hacker and you say that you are Osama. You may be a liar and you are not telling me the truth. How can I ensure that you are Osama, or you are the entity which you claim that you are? Then we will come to the second factor, which is called authentication. And in authentication, we will have three different ways to authenticate a user. This is called something you have or something you know. Then something you have and something you are. What does it mean? First, something you know, there is something you know. You are the only one who know this thing. When if you prove that you are Osama, you are my friend, and we have good memories together, and you called me by phone, I am your friend, Muhammad. Okay, really are you Muhammad? I don't trust that you are Muhammad. Come on, Osama, this is Muhammad. You remember when we were on the beach and we played football and we did so? Okay, then you are right, because this information which you know it, and this information this event which we attended together. Or he may tell me that, when I help you in the exam and I give you some questions, answers, and so on. But this, in the IT field, this it will be considered as the passwords. This it will be considered as the passwords. This something you know. In something you are or something you have, this it will be the SMS or email or token. In some situation, you may have some websites. It will ask you for your username and password. Then it will send you another password, which it's one-time password, which called OTP. And this one-time password, it can be sent to your SMS or it can be sent to your email. Then when you will type this one-time password, then it will be able to, the system, it will be able to authenticate you. And this usually it is used, for example, in banks. I'm quite sure that most of you have account banks, and you have this feature. When you are logging, you'll type username and password, then it will ask you for enter the one-time password, and it will be sent by email or SMS. Then you will be able to enter this value. Finally, the something you are, this it will be the biometrics. This it represents you, biometric. It can be your eye fingerprint, it can be your eye brand, it can be whatever, anything. Then these are the methods of the authentication. Then you can use any one of them. In some situation, you may hear, and I'm quite sure most of you hear this, the 2FA, two-factor authentication, or it may be called MFA, multiple factor authentication. What is this? This means that we are using two factors of this. As we mentioned that in the bank, it will ask you for a password, then it will ask you for the SMS or email one-time password, and this is what we call two-factor authentication. It will use two factors for the authentication. The third A, which is the authorization. What are the permissions you are allowed to do it on the network? You are allowed to use specific applications, you are allowed to use specific resources, services, hardware, software, whatever. And finally, the accounting. The accounting, this, it will be, what did you do? What did you do? It will be a form of logs. Whatever you did on the network, it will be registered and it will be logged. It can be logged in a form of syslog server. It can be on a text file. It can be logged in a database, whatever the type of the logging, which it can be used for in the future for analyzing the your connectivities, analyzing the application and services connectivity, and if there is any type of attacks or trials from the hacker to attack your network. This is what we call the access control. Also, there are some points here which are highlighted, and as we mentioned, the account provisioning, the directory services, where you have to keep the username and passwords and all the attributes used for authentication. Also, you have to care about the administration and privileged access. This for administrators, it will be very important because this it will protect your network. And finally, the authorization as we accept. The other concept, it will be the data and media sanitation. This, it's again an important concept for the cloud service providers. Why? Because in a cloud service provider, there are some important concepts you have to understand. Lock-in. Lock-in, this is an important concept. You have to be aware about it, and you have to understand what is it. Lock-in, this way that you are logged in or logged with a specific cloud service provider because he is using a proprietary software or format of data. When you are not able to export your data or application from this cloud service provider to another one, you may not satisfied about the service, you are not maybe not satisfied about the cost. There is another cloud service provider which is more stable and he will provide more resilience for your service and network. But unfortunately, this cloud service provider, the one which is hosting your current information, he is using proprietary method for the applications. For example, you want to use a CRM, when he told you we will provide a CRM and we will be very cheap compared with any other method, and unfortunately we are using some specific methods which is not standard and it's not an open system, it's closed model where this data it cannot be exported, and even if it's exported and you will not be able to import it to any other cloud service providers because their data structure is different from the data structure used in this cloud service provider or their application. When this means that it's you are locked with the cloud service provider, and this is very important. You have to make sure that you are using a cloud service provider who is using the standard open systems. When if you want to export your data to be imported in any other location, it will be easy. As we are using, for example, DOCX, this it's a word. When if I want to import it to or مثلا PDF, I want to import it to Word, then I will be able to do it. But if I use whatever any format, OWC, for example, then what is this OWC, which you stored? This it's some proprietary format which it will not be able, you will not be able to read it with any other application, and this means that you will be in a trouble because if you want to still utilize this information, you have to stick to this cloud service provider because he is the only one to provide the application which it will be able to read the OWC extension. Again, there is an important point that the data, it should, you make sure that the data it will be deleted if you want to quit the service provider. If you want to quit the service provider, the data, it should be deleted. Of course, the normal situation which we are following in the on-prem data center that you can spoil or crash, physically crash the hard disks. Basically crash the hard disks when the data it cannot be retrieved, or degaussing the hard disks. Degaussing the hard disks means that the hard disk
டாடி எதுவும் பண்ணல, கால் வரக்கூடாது, கால் அங்கதான் இருக்கணும்.
The hard disk, it will be exposed to strong magnetic field, and this it will destroy the data on the hard disks. But of course, you will not be able to do this concept with the cloud service provider. Can you go to cloud service provider and tell him that I want to destroy your hard disks? This is impossible, and this he will not allow you to do this at all. Especially these hard disks, it may contain some data for other customers as well. Then the best way for the data sanitation in the cloud service provider infrastructure, it will be the overwriting or the cryptography. Overwriting means that you can write data or some specific patterns over your data. And this it can be done twice or 3 times. There are some standards, it will say if you want to overwrite the data, you have to do it, for example, 2 times, 3 times with a specific patterns. And again, this method, it's not secure because if you have a sophisticated hacker, he may be able to again retrieve the data. Then the best way for protecting your data or deleting your data from a cloud service provider is using the cryptography erasing. Cryptography erasing, this is very simple, that you have to encrypt the data, and as we mentioned, that encryption, this means that you have a key. You will not be able to retrieve the data or decrypt the data without the key. All what we have to do that we want to destroy the key. If we are destroying the key, then this means that no one he will be able to decrypt the data, and no one he will be able to read it, then it will be meaningless. When the cloud service provider, he can format the hard disk or whatever, and this means that you are in safe side. The network security. Network security, again, it's very important. And as we mentioned, the network security, it will be, we have multiple concepts in network security. First of all, we can have the zones or multiple segments where the network itself, it can be divided into zones. And these zones depends upon the criticality of the applications. Some zones, it can be DMZ, some others, it can be internal. And even in the internal, it can be multiple classifications, critical or secret, top secret or confidential and top confidential and so on. And all the zones, just by dividing the data into zones, it does not mean that it's secure, but the security is coming by inserting a firewall between all these zones. And if it's a next generation firewall, then this means that it will be providing a good protection, because whatever any data, it will move from one cloud, from one segment to another segment. It will be checked by the firewall. It will be checked by built-in IPS, malware detection, and so on. But this means that it will provide a lot of security features. Also, if you are able to encrypt the data over the network, this will be great, because if you have any internal hacker or disgruntled employee or whatever, any source of threat, he will not be able to read the data, because even if he was able to capture the data from the network, he will not be able to read it because it's already encrypted. And now in Saudi Arabia, they mentioned that for government sections and CMIs, we have to encrypt the data on the local area networks. We have a lot of other network security devices like network IPS, network IDS, and so on. When whatever the method which you use it, you have to provide the security solution for the your network infrastructure. There is one important concept for virtualization, and virtualizations, this, as we mentioned, it's considered as the backbone of the cloud service provider services. In the virtualization, we have two concepts, the type 1 hypervisor and type 2 hypervisor. What does it mean, each one of them? The type 1 hypervisor, this you have the host. This is the host. You have the host. Host, it's a PC, or not a PC, it's a server. And in the type 1, you will have to install the hypervisor software here. It's up the host direct. Then after you install the hypervisor, you have to install the operating system. Then here the operating system. Okay, this considered type 1. Type 2, you have the host. But with the type 2, we are not install the type 2 only. What you have to, the server, you have to install the operating system first. Then you have to install the your hypervisor too. These concepts are very easy and understandable. For example, the type 2 hypervisor, I'm quite sure that you had on your PC or maybe desktop, you have some applications which you are able to create virtual servers, then you can install other operating systems or even the same operating system, and you can test some applications or whatever. There is from VMware an application which you can use it as a type 2 hypervisor. Type 1 hypervisor similar to Hyper-V from Microsoft, as VMware from VMware. You have also the KVM, not KVM, I cannot remember the name, but it's an open source. It's running on Linux, Unix, and it's a well-known virtualization software. What do you think? Which one is more secure? Is it hypervisor type 1 or hypervisor type 2? Any answer?
Is it type 2, sir?
Type 2. Okay.
I guess type 1.
Type 1. Okay. Why it's type 1? Okay, of course, type 1, it's more secure because in type 1, as you can see that the hypervisor, it's running on the hardware direct without any intermediate level or application or anything between the host and the hypervisor. But in this Hyper 2, we have the operating system in between. Then this means that if you have any bug or you have any problem with the operating system, then automatically it will affect the hypervisor. This means that if there is any hacker who was able to control the operating system, then this means that he will be able to control the hypervisor. Then usually the cloud service providers are using type 1 hypervisors, and type 2 hypervisors are used for end users, for testing, for developing, for whatever. These are some of the common threats for the cloud computing, and I am afraid that the time it will not be enough to go through all of them, but I think you may be familiar with some of them, as the data breaches, data loss, the insufficient identity credential and access management, insecure API, system vulnerabilities, account hijacking, malicious insiders, denial of service. I think we will cover all these threats in the next modules, because we will speak about the other modules in details for the cloud service components, as data, as application, as infrastructure, and all these threads. It will be covered in details during the next modules.